Night presses against the walls of Capua. In the training yard, iron rings whisper in the dark. Inside a locked barracks, men lie awake, palms blistered, breath held. Beyond the arena, the city glows with torchlight, dreaming of tomorrow's games. By dawn, the crowd expects blood. Rome called itself eternal, yet it was built on a simple bargain. A few command, the many obey. Millions toiled in fields and mines, rode galleys, and fought as entertainment so that citizens could watch death and call it sport. Among these were the gladiators, trained killers with no freedom, made to bleed for applause. In 73 BC, a man from Thrace refused the bargain. His name was Spartacus. He would begin with kitchen knives and end by frightening the Senate of Rome. And for 2 years, he would prove a truth empires hate to hear, that fear can climb walls faster than any army. But who was he before the legend? He was not born a rebel. Spartacus likely served as a soldier in Thrace, the rough lands north of Greece, where winter hardens men and border wars never end. Captured in conflict, sold across the Adriatic, he was delivered to the Ludus at Capua, a gladiator school where discipline was iron and hope was contraband. There, identity was stripped clean. The trainers measured you by scars and silence. You learned the weight of the gladius, the rhythm of the net and trident, the balance of a shield against a stranger's breath. You learned to die well, to make the crowd feel they had seen something worth the day's bread. Spartacus learned faster than most. He fought with a soldier's patience and a slave's memory. He watched the gate, counted the guards, noticed the hours when the kitchens were busiest and locks were loose. The arena taught spectacle. The barracks taught conspiracy. The escape from Capua began with a rumor and a plan that should not have worked. Roughly 70 to 80 gladiators agreed to break out using what they had: kitchen knives, meat cleavers, and the will to run through men in armor. Spartacus was among their leaders. With Crassus the Gaul and Oenomaus, they burst from the barracks at dusk, seized wagons carrying real weapons to the arena, and hacked their way into the streets. Capua reeled. A crowd expecting tomorrow's spectacle received it a day early. By nightfall, the fugitives had vanished toward the countryside, carrying stolen swords, a handful of javelins, and a plan stitched together from breathless hope. They climbed the slopes of Mount Vesuvius, not yet the killer it would one day become, and took shelter on the ridge. From there they watched Rome assemble to crush them. Rome sent not legions, but contempt, a praetor with militia, ropes, and overconfidence. The Roman commander camped below and blockaded the one easy path down. He thought the rebels trapped. Spartacus studied the cliff, where old vines hung like knotted ropes. By night, the fugitives braided those vines, slid down a face of rock the Romans never guarded, and fell upon the camp from behind. Tents collapsed. Men woke to fire and steel. The blockade shattered, and with it, the idea that this was a simple riot. Word ran through the hills and farmsteads. Slaves were breaking Rome's officers, and anyone who reached the mountain might choose a different life. Shepherds came with knives, field hands with mattocks, artisans with hammers and nails to mend swords and shape spearheads. Wives and children followed, bringing bread, bandages, news. A band of gladiators became a moving camp, then something larger, a community under arms. Around night fires they spoke a dozen languages but shared one sentence: not back to chains. This is where Spartacus becomes more than a fighter. He becomes a leader. The Senate laughed, then frowned, then sent praetors in pairs. First came Gaius Claudius Glaber, who failed on the mountain. Then Publius Varinius and Lucius Cosinius. Spartacus ambushed them on the march, split their forces, seized their supplies, and armed his people with captured Roman gear. The fugitives wore legionary helmets now, their shields flashed with stolen eagles. Discipline hardened, reconnaissance sharpened. They learned to move fast, hit flanks, vanish into hills, and return before messages could reach Rome. Inside the Senate, pride met panic. This was no longer about a school of gladiators. An army was roaming Italy, an army Rome had taught to fight, to obey signals, to exploit weakness. But what did Spartacus want? Revenge or escape? Across the Alps lay freedom, tribal lands where Rome's writ ran thin, and a Thracian might become a Thracian again. Spartacus began to drive his people north, skirting towns, breaking only those garrisons that blocked the road. They moved with discipline, trading coin where they could, taking what they must, punishing looters who preyed upon villagers. He was building not simply a force, but a future, a day's march at a time. But hope is fragile. Crassus and thousands of Gauls and Germans split from the column, eager for battle and plunder. Spartacus urged the Alps. Others wanted Rome's blood, not its border. When Roman forces caught Crassus near Mount Garganus, they destroyed his contingent. Spartacus mourned him, then made the legions pay for it in kind. Still, he bent the march north again, a river of fugitives winding between mountain and sea. Every pass promised the same thing: one more week, one more victory, and then the snow, and then home. So why, some sources say, did he turn back? The ancient writers disagree. Some claim the people he led could not face a life beyond Italy and drifted south for warmth and food. Others say Spartacus sought ships to cross to Sicily to spark a wider slave rising. What is certain is this: by the time Rome understood the scale of the threat, it sent not contempt but Crassus, the richest man in the Republic, with fresh legions and a brutal plan to pen the rebels behind walls of ditches and stakes. That is where the road darkens. The Senate had run out of patience and out of generals. They called upon Marcus Licinius Crassus, Rome's richest man, whose wealth could buy legions and whose ambition could eclipse any rivals. He accepted, not for duty, but for legacy. Crassus restored Roman discipline with terror. When a cohort faltered, he revived an ancient punishment: decimation, 1 in every 10 men beaten to death by his own comrades. Fear, he believed, was stronger than faith. He built a wall across southern Italy, 60 kilometers of trenches and palisades, to trap Spartacus between mountain and sea. Supplies dwindled, winter closed in. For the first time, the rebellion looked mortal. Yet what empire ever killed the idea of freedom by starving it? Spartacus broke through at night, filling part of the ditch with corpses and earth, leading thousands across in storm and darkness. They fought like men already dead, and for a moment, the impossible happened again. The wall that was meant to confine them became their road to Rome. In 71 BC, on the plain of the Silurus River, the final act began. Crassus advanced with 8 legions. Spartacus drew up his force of weary thousands, many armed with scavenged blades and memories of victory. Before the horn sounded, witnesses say Spartacus slaughtered his own horse. "If I win," he said, "I'll have all the horses I need. If I lose, I won't need one." Then the armies collided. The field dissolved into smoke, mud, and screams. Spartacus cut a path toward Crassus himself, the richest man in Rome, against the poorest man to ever defy it. A javelin struck his thigh. He fought on his knees until the tide buried him. When it ended, the rebels lay in heaps, their banners torn to rags. No body was ever found that Rome could name as Spartacus. But the fear he inspired remained standing. Rome had won its battle. It had not restored its peace. 6,000 prisoners were taken alive. Crassus ordered them crucified along the Appian Way, 1 cross every 30 meters from Capua to Rome. The road that once brought grain and trade now carried only silence and carrion birds. Travelers counted the miles by corpses. Rome called it justice. History calls it warning. The message was simple: remember who rules and why you must never forget it. Yet even those who obeyed saw what it cost to enforce obedience. For every nail Rome drove into those crosses, it hammered a question into its own heart. How strong is a republic built on fear? We know Spartacus only through Roman eyes. Writers who feared him, senators who needed him to remain a villain. Plutarch, Appian, Florus, they disagree on almost everything except his courage. They called him a barbarian, yet noted his mercy toward prisoners and his refusal to let his men abuse captives. They said he dreamed of leaving Italy, not conquering it. The Romans could not decide whether to despise or admire him, so they did both. Archaeology offers little. No armor inscribed with his name, no grave marked Spartacus. Centuries later, his name would be reborn by painters, playwrights, and revolutionaries. To the poor, he was proof that power could bleed. To the powerful, he was a lesson in what happens when it does. Today, the Appian Way is a quiet road shaded by cypress. Tourists walk where crosses once stood, reading plaques, hearing nothing but the wind. No empire remains forever, but the idea Spartacus carried, that no one is born a slave, still moves through history like an ember that refuses to die. Rome tried to crucify the message along with the man. Instead, it immortalized him. Every generation finds its own version of that defiance. A miner on strike, a soldier deserting tyranny, a citizen standing before power and saying no. Spartacus failed to free the world, but he freed a thought, and thoughts have longer lives than kingdoms. Long after his body vanished, centuries later, another civilization free from rebellion, rich in order, would use that same human hunger for freedom to explore the world itself. And an admiral named Zheng He would sail beyond every horizon known to the West. A voyage that would make the world feel both vast and connected again. Join us for our next episode on mini history, Zheng He, China's voyage before Columbus.